So planting time, probably the most enjoyable aspect of doing these jobs. And we've obviously got some established plants already here, which we've been taking out of the baskets and turning pots like this into sections like this. It's very obvious where a plant wants to split. As long as you've got a shoot and a root, a bit of rhizome, that'll grow quite happily. So with these sections, we can then start to push them into the gravel and get them into place. So having first laid out a few plants on the gravel loose like this, just to get an idea of kind of a planting theme and to see how it looks, planting couldn't be simpler. And it's just a case of sticking the plant in the gravel, as my glamorous assistant will show us. So having planted these, it's now a good opportunity to go around and just snip off any snap bits of leaf, any brown bits, just to tart it up a little bit and make it look a little bit more presentable. But what a difference it makes having some greenery in here, just breaking up those lines of rockwork and gravel. Really does transform a pond. I think there's scope here for more plants in the future. In terms of colour, I think something called Lobelia cardinalis, the Crimson Queen. Beautiful bright red foliage would look, you know, cracking in this pond. Very, very nice. But for the time being, I think this is enough plants and a good addition, just to finish it off. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. So it's very strange, finally being at that stage of the job where I'm clearing up. Well, in terms of construction, I think the pond is now essentially finished. I've still got the filtration system to plumb in properly. That's arriving next week. Little bit of a clean, a proper jet wash, but for the time being, that's it. And I'm really pleased with the end result. I think it fits in with the garden beautifully, and it's been a really fun project to do. So it's not quite the end of the video, but we're nearly there. But for today, I'm signing off. Cheers. Well, it's been a couple of days since I've posted anything on this job. I've been a busy pond man. I've introduced the fish from the holding tank into the pond and they're looking very happy. And that's because I've just been to go and rescue a load more koi to introduce into this pond from Natalie's sister. So I've had a busy start to the day driving over to Essex, a couple of hours drive, and I've picked up 10 beautiful koi, which are now going to go into the holding tank for a temporary quarantine before they go into the main pond. So that was a fraught few minutes with the koi there. I noticed as soon as I took the cover off of the holding tank in the back of the van that one of the fish was laying on its side belly up. You may well notice that in the video. So immediately got that down in the holding tank, and one of the butterflies, one of the other koi, was also showing signs of stress. I mean, it was a long journey, just over 2 hours in the tank. Terrible road surfaces around here, so the vibrations coming through were not particularly great. But after about 20 minutes of me holding the koi upright, sort of pushing it forward gently, making sure that it was kept near the aerated water, it's made a full recovery. And this morning, all 10 fish are looking nice and happy in their holding tank. Now the plan is that these guys are going to stay in here for a week or two, just for me to keep an eye on them before they go into the main pond. I'll put in a light general tonic in here, just as a precaution, a preventative, just to make sure that there are no issues with potentially sort of white spot, stress-related problems like that. But they're all looking nice and happy. And then I'll introduce 2 or 3 of these at a time into the main pond and gradually build up the numbers. But I think they're going to be lovely additions to this pond. They're going to look great cruising around in there. So the next job is going to be to install the main filtration system. We've been running on the temporary filter, that Awaza filter clear that I rigged up just temporarily, and that's actually done a remarkably good job at keeping that pond clear even with fish in. But the new filter is going to make it that much clearer. Really polish the water. So you're probably familiar with some of the Awaza Screenmatic filters that I install. The biggest unit up until now has been the Screenmatic 2 140,000, where there's been some revisions and a slight upgrade. So they've now called this one the 145,000. It's a little bit bigger, same footprint, a little bit taller. But we'll get that rigged up today, give all the paving and the surrounds a final jet wash, and then I think I can sign this job off. There we go, the filtration system successfully installed and plumbed in. Now I have to say this install didn't go as smoothly as some of the filters I've put in. I have fitted multiple Awaza systems and Screenmatics, generally without hitches. This one was just constantly leaking from where the UV bolts up onto the filter, to the point where I ended up doing a video call with Awaza, and that's why I like using them as a company, because the technical support is fantastic. So if you do have problems, you can contact somebody and get to the bottom of it. But I had a video call with them to run through what I was doing. Everything I was doing was correct, so I fitted it back to the unit, and sod's law, it didn't leak when I was on the video call. But there you go, such is life. I'm glad it's not leaking now anyway. So this is a revised version of the larger Screenmatic 2 system. This replaces what was once called the Screenmatic 2 140,000, which you've probably seen me install multiple units in some of my videos. This unit is now called a 145,000. Essentially it's just a bigger tank. It's the same footprint or thereabouts, but slightly taller. And that does mean that the tank itself holds more volume. One of the old issues I used to have with this system was that the filter foams, upon first switching on the pump, had a certain amount of the filter media exposed above water level. Now as that filter started to get dirty, the water level would rise and eventually cover those foams. So it wasn't a major issue, but it did mean that biological filtration was reduced until those foams were fully submersed. So that addition to this unit is a welcome one. They've also changed the slide valve assembly. You used to have a slide valve internally in the tank that you would lift to discharge the unit. Now we've got an external slide valve. Nice and professional, I like it. In all, it's a pretty good addition. All of the rest of the components here are exactly the same. Now I've done lots and lots of videos in the past showing how to maintain these units, so I won't go into too much detail. But what you will see is that along all of the new media in this filter, I've also included some of the filter foams that I had inside the temporary filtration system. And that's because these are nice and already soiled and mucky. There's a lot of beneficial bacteria, nitrifying bacteria in here, which are going to help to colonise these new foams. So I wanted to make sure that they were included. But a quick run through with this filter. Water runs through the UVC first, that sterilises and clarifies the water. Enters the filter at the top here, the water hits this sieve. This takes out down to quite small particles and takes out the bulk of the waste. As this screen gets heavily soiled and dirty and the water level starts to creep up the screen, it will hit a sensor which is positioned underneath this bar here. Once that sensor is triggered, this screen will rotate, collecting all of the debris into this little collection cup here. And it works very effectively. And beneath this screen you saw all the filter foams. They mechanically remove much of the muck and biologically have a huge surface area, so lots of beneficial bacteria breaking down all the waste in the water, and then the water returns via the 4-inch pipe back into the pond. Cleaning of the foams at the bottom. Once the system is filled with water, you've got a little contraption here which you locate on top of the filter foams, and that compresses the sponges, releasing all of the muck and the dirt. Then you open up the slide valve and flush it through. I won't go into any detail in cleaning the system out because I've done multiple videos to show you how to clean them, and if you have any queries I can send you links to certain videos that include that. Great system, tried and tested, more than adequate for a pond of this volume and the quantity of fish that are going in, but I always like to overdo filtration and UVs. A cleaner pond, less maintenance, can only be a welcome thing. So the Bitron's a great UV, and on the side here you've got the electronics, the ballast and the controls for the unit, where you can turn it off and then through increments increase the power of the UV until it's running at full whack, 100%. This is a little gauge here depicting the water temperature. It's pretty accurate. It does get affected a little bit if this unit's in the sun, but here in a shady position that should be pretty true. So 19, 20 degree water temperature currently. And this little indicator bar here will tell you the lifespan of the UV tubes, and as this counts down to no lights, it shows you it's time to replace the tube. Again, in practice, always replace UV tubes annually in spring, and when I do that on units like this, I then reset this so that it shows full bars, but it gives you a sort of an indication as to how much life is left in the UV tubes. Replacement of tubes on this is nice and simple. A little clip on here to open this, one safety screw, and then all of that can be removed, leaving the quartz sleeve in place. You could do that with the system running if you wanted to, it won't leak. You can replace the tubes, put them back in. Of course, it's always a good idea to remove the quartz sleeve as well and give that a clean for inspection. To do that, switch everything off before you remove that quartz sleeve. So for now, all that's really left to do is I want to give all the paving and the slabs a bit of a jet wash and a proper clean, and then until we introduce the new koi into the pond next week at some point, that's really it for this job. Just watching that pair of koi in the pond. There's 2 or 3 which are showing signs of spawning, and we are now, here we go, at about the next lunar cycle, the next full moon, when they'll be due to spawn. So I suspect Natalie and Mark will be the proud parents of some baby koi very soon. Right, all nice and clean. Trouble is now, I can't get any dirty footprints over the paving. And because there's soil and mud everywhere around this pond, every time you stand on the paving it gets dirty. So, height of fashion, I'm going to stick these on briefly so I can get my stuff out, which I should have taken out before I started jet washing. Let's just pop a little bit of food in for them. So I've got to be careful not to introduce too much food into this pond during the early days. Obviously with the filtration and the pond itself being immature, it'll take a little while for that to build up the beneficial biological bacteria, the nitrifying bacteria, which will process the fish waste. So for the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks, making sure that we don't introduce too many fish too quickly, making sure that food is kept to an absolute bare minimum and that any uneaten food is removed from the pond after a few minutes is really important. And then gradually the filtration will start to build up its bacteria and be able to cope with the waste. And what we don't want is to have an ammonia or a nitrite spike, which would then cause problems. Look at the shoulder sticklebacks. Like little piranhas. Fantastic little things. Now I suspect that if the koi do spawn, that the sticklebacks, which are, you know, packing way above their size, they're quite voracious little predators, these guys. Can be a little bit nippy towards longer fin fish if you haven't got much space in your pond, so I imagine that these will probably pick off the fry and eat them. So overstocking in this pond shouldn't be an issue, naturally. But a nice fun little addition to the pond, something I don't see very often. Great things, these water blades. Very nice, and they can work equally well in a formal scenario or in a much less formal pond. Gives you a nice sound, a nice soft sound, and quite a modern, contemporary feature to have in a pond. I'm looking forward to coming back at night time and seeing all of this illuminated. I'll give it a few days, wait for the pond to really clear, because it's when the pond is at its clearest that the lights are going to look their best. I think in the meantime, we've basically tidied up here. Apart from the addition of the fish that will go in, some of them will go in next week, I'm pretty much done on this job. Natalie and Mark have been very kind and donated this box of Peroni, knowing very well that we like a lager or two. So I think we're going to sit here and have a beer and just enjoy the fruits of our labour. It's been a big job, a hard job. You know, we've been on it for a long time, almost a couple of months off and on, although we've not been doing it every day. Very enjoyable job. And I know both Dave and I are very pleased and proud of the results. And I know that Natalie and Mark are equally pleased with it as well. I'd like to extend a big thank you to Natalie and Mark. You've been fantastic hosts, really looked after us very nicely, and it's been a pleasure working for you, so thank you very much. And I look forward to getting stuck into the lower pond soon and turning that into a nice feature. But in the meantime, it's beer o'clock. Oh, nice, big box. We need to remember to bring bottle openers with us in future. Ooh, that wall was made for that. Cheers. Oh, that's good. I'll open you one up as well. Lovely. Well, apart from the introduction of the koi, which I'll start next week, and I may well do a little bit of video footage and perhaps do a small update video in a few weeks' time, I'd also like to pop back and just do a little bit of filming of this pond lit up at night time, and depending on how quickly I pull my finger out and do the editing of this video, it may or may not be included in this final part. I'd like to thank everybody who has watched. If you've got to the end of this video and got this far, I know I go on an awful lot, so really appreciate all of the views and the new subscribers that I've gained along the way, so thank you. Mark and Natalie, thank you so much for your hospitality. You've been wonderful hosts and lovely clients to work for. I hope you're pleased with the end result. We are. And I hope that I will continue to work for you in the future, servicing the pond and seeing how it establishes. I think for the meantime, a very appropriate place to end the video. I'm Ed from Crystal Clear Aquatics.
And I'm Dave.
Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next pond, which with a bit of luck will be that lower pond. It will start later on this summer. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers, cheers, cheers. And I want to have a swim in this pond as well. That might be another video. Hello, it's me again. It's late at night, just gone 10 o'clock, and I've come to have a look at the pond illuminated for the first time. Let's go and check it out and see how it's looking. Very nice. Doesn't the barn look beautiful lit up as well? Lovely to see the fish lit up at night time like that.